recovery process started when I went to prison. When I got locked up, January the 20th, 2002 is when I finally said enough was enough. I looked at the situation I had gotten myself in. I also looked at the fact that, someone had lost their life because of it, and I was ready to make a change. And so that's when it started for me. I was released in May of 2022. This May will make 3 years of me being home, and I was incarcerated for 20 years. And I've been in recovery now for over 20 years.
At 17, I became attracted to the lifestyle of the drugs, the fast pace, the fast life, the fast money. That cycle just got worse and worse and worse over the years. At first, you think you're having fun. It's all good, and you're partying, and all is right with the world. But then things start to get dark. My life just kind of started to spiral out of control. The drug use got heavier. The dealing got heavier, shootouts and things like that in broad daylight. I just started going to prison.
I'm the second oldest of 12. 3 siblings and 8 cousins. We all grew up in the same house as brothers and sisters. And it was absolute chaos, and I loved every minute of it. It wasn't to the age of around 11 that I realized that we were poor. We ate every day, but when it came to material things, there wasn't a lot of that going on. And I know that we needed money, so I went out in the community and started finding ways to make money. I worked, I did the papers, I went to the grocery store and did bags. At the age of 13, I decided to try to sell drugs. Before I knew it, I was using those same drugs, and my life just spiraled out of control. Started going to jail. Before I looked up, 30 years of my life was gone to drug use, incarceration, and street life. It wasn't until then that I knew I could be better. I wanted to do something different.
There was always someone I knew who was either impacted by the criminal justice system or impacted by the police or something of that nature. It played a big role in who I am today and what I do. Although I myself have never been incarcerated, I have secondhand lived experience. Of my 12 cousins, 5 of them went to prison. My male cousins actually, while incarcerated, were offered so many vocational trades and opportunities. When my female cousin came home, there were no resources. We really struggled as her family. We had to be the support and the resource. We had to be the restitution. We had to be the transportation she needed. Most of the resources and the supports are male-centered. Oftentimes, women are forgotten. There was definitely a large gap that was undeniably important to close, or at least figure out a way to jump in and say, how do we dismantle this gap so that women have as equal an opportunity as men to return home and be successful?
I started using drugs and alcohol at the age of 12. It ramped up when I was like about 16. And that was because of the neighborhood and the environment that I was in. I saw a lot of violence, started smoking and drinking more just to be able to cope with what I was going through and seeing on a day-to-day basis. By the time I hit 17, I was basically waking up during the day with a bottle, and back then it was just smoking marijuana. Then it turned into PCP. Then it turned into Percocets. By the time I was 18, I was full-blown drug addict. I was selling drugs at the time, and I was still in the streets. I lost one of my close friends in 2021. He was also a juvenile lifer. I didn't know that he was actively using and was in active addiction at that time. That caused me to spring into action. We decided to put together some mutual support groups inside of the institution. We were successful in getting the funding. Got 40 of us trained as peer recovery specialists. All of us are now certified. I was the first one to get out. That's how my journey got started.
One thing I've learned is that addiction in itself is traumatic, living that lifestyle. How do you get out of the mentality of living on the streets of Baltimore at 3 o'clock in the morning, understanding that I needed time to allow myself to heal, not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally. Going to the last facility that I was in gave me the ability to talk to somebody that was just like me. And that kind of changed things for me because it allowed me to know that I had a voice in my own life. I knew I always had a heart to serve people. I got a job working for the local behavioral health authority here in Baltimore City, and it kind of gave me an opportunity to learn how to work on the administrative side of city government as opposed to always being on the service delivery side. I saw first where the system was fractured, and then I began more and more to see how the system was broken.
My reentry was not the best, but it was great because I had a lot of support. But reentry in general is very difficult. I think that the main thing that's missing in reentry, which is the key component, is stable housing. First, we have making sure that a person has a stable, safe place to live when they get out, and also making that transition totally different from incarceration. But we often put them right back in the same place. In fact, when I got out, they put me in a shelter. They put me in a place with 30 men on a bunk, and I felt like I was in a dormitory all over again. The second thing is that being able to reunify with family. Most places that people come to when they get out, whether it's transitional housing, halfway housing, recovery housing, whatever that it may be, they're often restricted. So now you're hindering or stifling that person's reconnection with their family, and that's not good. Among the other things is just the services in general. It's very rare that you're going to have a social worker or a case manager make sure that you have your birth certificate and a social security card so that when you get out, you can get an ID. If a person gets out and all they have is a birth certificate, but they don't have the social security card, that makes it difficult for them to be able to have that smooth process.
When I look at everybody that's about to be released is automatically in a crisis. Why they're in a crisis is because some of us don't have a place to go home to. The most important thing for a person coming home is stability, a home. Someplace they can call their own because they can begin to grow. It's just a matter of how they are made aware of these resources.
Everybody has purpose. It may not look like it in the beginning. They may have a hard, rough start. They may go to jail back and forth. They may be caught up in a whole lot of things. But after all of that, there is always light at the end of the tunnel.